Hey, it's Zach. And you know about First Take, but what about First Take? Her Take, a new podcast hosted by Charlie Arnault, Kimberly Martin, and Shanae Agwumake. They discuss and debate the biggest sports stories and delve into topics about their lives and culture. You can find First Take, Her Take, wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a beautiful Friday morning in New England, where it's not so beautiful up in the northern part of New England because the 17-time world champion Boston Celtics are under 500, flailing, struggling. There's so much angst in Boston. Should Brad Stevens not be the coach anymore? Is Danny Ainge in trouble? Is the sky falling? Do the Celtics actually stink? All the extra draft picks from the Nets trade are gone, and this is all we have. What's going on? To help us all break it down, a man who literally just hung up somehow on Michael Rappaport to do this podcast, Boston Celtics legend, former New Jersey Net, current Celtics TV analyst, the one and only Brian Scalabrine. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm not as much as the sky is falling as everyone here, but I have been consistent when it comes to this team. I don't think the style of play, I think when we were 8-3, it's a reflection of exactly what it is right now. But I'm looking forward to how they respond tonight. Today's Friday. They're playing the Indiana Pacers at home in the Garden, and we'll see what they're about.
Knowing my podcast luck, they're going to win by like 40 tonight, and this whole podcast is going to sound silly in retrospect. So here's where I am, Scal. Okay,
all right.
Here's where I am. Their four best players have played 28 minutes together the entire season, and I believe all of that happened in one game.
Correct.
With Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum both on the floor, they're +7 per 100 possessions. One of those four players is currently injured, Marcus Smart. Another one of those four players has been injured half the season, and for half the season that he has played has looked like a shell of himself, and that's Kemba Walker. They have played 15 games in 26 days, many of them on the road. I'm sure they're gassed. So I am not super duper concerned. Like you, I was probably a little less exuberant about this team at the beginning of the season than consensus. Like when Hayward walked and they got nothing for him. Well, they got a trade exception, which is trade exceptions, as you know, don't appear on the floor. They don't take shots or make passes. They're just salary cap arcane stuff. It's like they're just going to miss him. They're too thin at the 3 and the 4. They don't have enough playmaking around their main guys. They're going to have to play too many big guys. I didn't think they would quite miss him this much, but I will say, so to me, it's not shocking that they're struggling. It's shocking the depths of it, but I will say you've been on teams before. Like, it's easy for me from the outside to say, well, they're injured and the schedule's been bad, but sometimes things just snowball and the frustration takes hold and you can't quite climb out of it. Like, these are human beings. These are not robots. And when you watch them play now, you see sort of a sluggish, frustrated team. And sometimes it's harder to pull out of that. And I think you're saying that basically. It's like, I'm interested to see how they respond.
Yeah. So Zach, right now, I'm guessing based on our text messages about a week ago, you love Jokic, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and why do you love him?
Very interested to see how you've now weaving Jokic.
No, I'm giving you an example. I'll get back to it, right? Like Jokic, probably of any player in the NBA, there's probably 10 guys that do this, but gets guys wide open looks, right? Do you love the Utah Jazz and the way they play? You must, right?
I enjoy watching them play.
Yeah. So what do you get with the Utah Jazz? You get wide open looks, right? Celtics right now. So using the formula of more wide open looks, 6 feet or more, they get the 27th most amount in the NBA. They shoot top 4 in the NBA when they are wide open. My whole thing has always been with this team is wide open shots, and the good teams get wide open shots. Last year in the bubble, they lost to Miami. Why? Miami was a much better passing team. They got better looks than the Celtics. Like, we overvalue hard shots like they're worth more points. We overvalue the side step back against the clock 3 that a guy makes. Like, we think that shot is worth more. And I in one sense, I'm not stupid. I do understand that those are very difficult shots to make. But the name of the game nowadays in the no contact NBA, you got to drive and make the extra pass, wide open shots is the name of the game. And the Celtics just don't get that many of them. They're 30th in the NBA in hockey assist. There's 103 or so possessions in a game. Zach, they get 2 hockey assists a game. 2.
That's it? 2?
That's it. They average 2 hockey assists a game. Can you, just wrap your mind around what that is and then put that into the NBA now. Take the players that you like or the teams that you like to watch and then try to manifest the idea of 2 hockey assists a game. So where problems of emotions and injuries and the bench and trade exceptions and Gordon Hayward, I just think they're just not a good passing team. And I don't think they were good at the beginning of the year. And I don't think they're good now. And until that changes, they're not going to be a good team this year. And it all comes down with getting open shots and ball movement.
That's interesting because I think there's been a lot of coverage, and I think it's true, that both Tatum and Brown have improved as playmakers. They've taken the next step as playmakers, incremental steps, but steps nonetheless. Who do you think is the best passer on the team?
Marcus Smart, probably.
Me too. Yeah. That was going to be my answer. I think his playmaking is really underrated, and I think they miss it. And they miss Gordon Hayward. Like, you don't think of Gordon Hayward as this give him the ball at the top of the arc for 30 pick and rolls a game, but you kick him the ball in that hockey assist situation in the middle of the floor, just any spot on the floor, he's going to make the right play and just add some fluidity to the offense. And I think they really missed that. Like, they just have, I don't know whose fault it is that, like you mentioned the hockey assists, I didn't know that. They're 28th in assist rate. I think they're 22nd in total passes. It's just really sluggy. Like, sluggy is not even a word. It's just like, it's not fun to watch. I don't know whose fault it is, because with all these guys missing, and it's not just the injured guys, it's the talent drain that they've undeniably suffered as all these free agents have left. They just don't have, like, the guys around Jason and Jalen are basically guys who stand around for 3-point shots, or like garbage men like Tristan Thompson. And you've been delighted, as have I, by like Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice will 3 times a game hook up on these fun high lows and all this, but like, that's not, if we're talking about a Tristan Thompson, Daniel Tice high low, it's not really what we should be talking about for like a really functional NBA offense.
Yeah. So the way I look at the game, and this is why, and I'm not hard on Tatum and Brown. I'm just trying to point out to people that these elite players, I'm going to throw even Brad Beal in this category. Brad Beal comes off pick and rolls, gets double teams, and gets rid of the ball like it's a walk in the park. Jason Tatum comes off double teams, gets trapped, and he doesn't want anything to do with the basketball at that point. Like, to be good in this league, you got to make threatening plays. You got to draw 2, make a simple play, and then that's typically where like the hockey assists come from. And both those guys who are extremely talented, they're already doing the hard stuff. It's the little stuff that they have to improve on. It's the get the ball out of a double team and compromise the defense. It's the drawing 2 and finding the wide open guys. And I know that, like in Boston at the beginning of the year, I was not like critical. I was saying it's going to take a while for these 2 guys to become elite players because they haven't faced 100 different defenses. They haven't faced coming off a double team on a pick and roll. They haven't faced a guy in a soft and had to, read that third defender and hit that corner man. These are all things that they have to face, and they got to get good at it. Very similar to an NFL quarterback coming from college. At first, they can throw a simple pass, and then they're reading depths of where the safety is, and a guy steps forward, and they throw a pass over the head. Like, all that stuff takes time, and you have to study, and you have to read it. And I got killed for saying that, and now I'm saying the same thing, and I'm like getting killed for not being like tough enough on them. But it simply is like the Celtics have to find out ways to get better shots, and those 2 guys are the ones where it starts. They're the head of the snake. They're the ones that draw 2. They're the ones that make the plays off of that. And then you get the, Daniel Tice to Tristan Thompson high low. But that all comes off of guys like Tatum and Brown.
I mean, Kemba looking like himself will help because it just takes so much of the pressure off those 2 guys. He can run 30 pick and rolls a game and get good shots out of it. But it's interesting you mentioned that about Tatum and Brown, the easy passes. So first of all, we should mention that Jason Tatum is recovering from the coronavirus and has made no bones about the fact that it really has impacted his conditioning. But it is, I write this column every week, the 10 things I like and don't like, and I've had this item pending that I just haven't put in because I don't think it's that interesting. But my favorite Jason Tatum play is just when he gets off the ball early. Like the passes that aren't fancy at all. He hasn't really drawn a double team. The defense has just kind of started to shade his way, and boom, just kick it to the guy on the wing and let that guy make an easy drive. Like, so much of basketball is just that play gets things started, and it doesn't even lead to an assist. In fact, it could lead to swing, 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 and the ball ends up back in Jason Tatum's hands.
Correct.
For an easy shot. It never makes a highlight. It doesn't record any statistics, but just that simple swing, like inside out pass when the defense begins to help, it just triggers so much good stuff.
Yeah. So, and I think here's a good way to look at it when you're watching, right? I use a free throw line as like the moment of truth, right? You have to go through and take a pencil and just mark them as you go. How many times are Brown and Tatum cracking that free throw line and making a threatening pass? Like I can find, like, Zach, me and you can go play in the NBA right now, and we can make those simple plays that are around the perimeter. And there is an element of that you have to be good. I understand that. But what I'm really looking for is when they go and they crack the free throw line and the defense comes over, how many threatening passes are being made from that moment? And I will say they're getting more now than they did at the beginning of the season. But that is the moment of truth. That is where you start reading guys shifting one way, and then you pass opposite, and you find guys wide open. And that's where when you get inside that free throw line and you make plays from there, that is where in the NBA, like, people won't be able to see this, but a contest here is a make, but a contest there is a miss.
In
right?
my face, yeah.
Contest
in my face is a miss.
You're talking about the difference of a tenth of a second, and if you can get your players around you a tenth, like a quarter of a second more to shoot, like, these guys' percentages are going to go up. So that's my only challenge. I don't actually think that our team has all kinds of problems, or they're tuning them out, or they're not doing this, they're not doing that. I just don't think we're a very good passing team, which means all the things come into play, like the fatigue, the games, Jason Tatum with the COVID. If you're not making easy plays, now you got to make hard plays, and hard plays are hard to make over the course of 48 minutes when you got all the pressure on your back, and you can't make people around you better. So I would go back to the original of just like simple plays will actually allow you to save some energy for that fourth quarter, allow you to at that point get into your bag and do what you need to do in the fourth quarter, if you can make the simple plays in the first 42 minutes of the game.
The simplest way that this all manifests itself on the floor, in addition to the hockey assist, which that stat is blowing my mind still.
It is. It's
ridiculous. They are 28th in shots at the rim. They never get to the rim. And I will say, this has been an issue the entire time Brad Stevens has been the coach.
Agreed.
They never, ever get to the rim. They've never had a rim attacking team. And I don't really know why. I think Brad is a really good coach, but like, when you watch the Celtics offense, with the exception maybe of the one Isaiah Thomas year, and even that year, the year he was 5th in MVP, they were still like 16th in shots at the rim. There's a lot of east-west and not a lot of north-south. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know why that is. I don't know if he's just kind of letting guys play free and not saying, some coaches are like the Jazz clearly, the Rockets are the most famous example. Like, we're just shooting half our shots from three. That's it. If you don't take threes, you're out of the game. The Jazz clearly said, we're shooting half our shots from three. That's it. Stop taking these other kinds of shots. Brad clearly doesn't do that, but I think he's clearly a very good coach. Like, defensively, they're consistently really good. They've figured out something about defending the three-point line in the NBA that probably no other team has figured out. But that has been an issue that has dogged them his entire time there, and it just I don't really get why, honestly.
Because your two best players, they want to get into their bag. They want to catch the ball, jab, get into triple threat. And it's just really easy, right? You watch the Jazz, all they do is drive closeouts or shoot threes, right? There's an element that when you brought up the Jazz and the Rockets, the element of that you didn't mention is, you ever see besides James Harden, like, eliminate him, right? Like, PJ Tucker doesn't get the ball and like start jabbing and like, put the ball on the floor and do the sidestep three. It's either catch and shoot or catch and drive. And when you're driving, all those guys drive with the intent on scoring at the rim. The Celtics don't do that. Now, I'm not there every day to understand what their individual workouts are like, but Quinn Snyder, all they want to do is shoot the three or deck it and get a layup. And when you can't get a layup, they call that a rim read. When you go up and you're, I'm not going to score this one, and you find another guy, well, guess what that guy's going to do? He's going to deck the ball and try to do the exact same thing. And I don't know, like, if you guys played, or I don't know if the listeners have played. Like, that is the worst thing to guard in the NBA, is helping out on a drive and running off a shooter and then trying to contain that guy from driving again. So that is the formula for success in the NBA. And when the teams that do that are the teams that win, I'm not sure that they want to play that way, because their two best players do want to get into their quote unquote bag and show their dribble, the step back, and all those other things, which I don't think that today's NBA, that's conducive to succeeding. I don't.
It is interesting, though, that this week has really been, we saw Danny Ainge do his weekly interview. Wick Grauspec did the rare governor interview. It does feel like they're circling the wagons a little bit, and that this week has been the first time, maybe ever, that there's been real scrutiny, at least among fans, about Brad Stevens, and even a lot of Danny Ainge grumbling of like, okay, all the extra picks are gone. One of the picks, I think the Memphis pick, crown jewel, became Aaron Nesmith, who's actually, I think, looked pretty good. The sack pick became Romeo Langford, who hasn't played all year. By the way, I think Romeo Langford has a chance to be a decent player. No one is talking about the fact that he hasn't played all year. I think that's hurt their team.
Yeah.
All the other picks are gone. Kyrie's gone. Gordon's gone. Horford's gone. Another guy people don't talk about because he's old and unsexy and flamed out in Philly could use his playmaking now. Like, just talking about the total amount of passing on the team, like, could use that a little bit. Obviously, the Kyrie thing, Wick took some heat for saying, Kyrie threw us for a loop by leaving, or kind of threw our plans out of whack. I don't really get why that was so controversial. I mean, their plans were very obvious. We traded Isaiah. By the way, the guy who never makes trades, right? Danny Ainge, who's just pilloried for never making trades, did make a trade that was, I think, mostly criticized at the moment he made it. Isaiah Thomas and what became the number 8 pick, a Brooklyn pick, for Kyrie Irving. That's a big, big swing. And I think the plan was clearly Kyrie is going to be the reason why Anthony Davis points at this team and says, well, this is a team I'm willing to re-sign with. Then we throw all our chips in for AD. Exactly. That's our team. So what Wick was saying, I mean, he didn't mention Anthony Davis. I don't even know if he was thinking about Anthony Davis, but I can tell you that that's what I was thinking of. So they've just had a lot of talent drain, but it has been interesting to see them circle the wagons a little bit. Just me personally, I don't think there's any chance that Brad Stevens is actually in trouble. Do you?
No.
You're there more than I am.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that's so the radio people here, for whatever reason, I don't get it, because like, you're a basketball guy, I'm a basketball guy, like in the basketball world, and we watch. And by the way, I'm sure that the former middle linebacker of the New England Patriots isn't watching NBA games the way that we watch NBA games. Like, I think they watch the Celtics. I don't think they watch other teams. I don't think they have any idea. These are still the same guys who are like, yeah, I like old school basketball where we post up and stuff like that. Like, they're the ones calling for Brad Stevens to be fired, right? But I commend the ownership and Danny Ainge for coming out and speaking to the media, because we've seen it where a lot of these organizations are going down the drain, and next thing you know, you don't hear a peep from the governor, or you don't hear a peep from the GM / president. But those guys are coming out and they're taking some of the heat off of Brad Stevens, whether I'm sure it's not their heat. It's just like the general heat that's going out there. And I like the fact that those guys have done that, but it's not uncommon for those guys to have weekly spots and talk about
Danny does every week on the radio show.
Yeah. So it does feel a certain way, but I think personally, what I think Danny is trying to do is, I'm thinking he's looking for another ball mover. I think there's no way, I mean, maybe, because I haven't spoke to Danny about the hockey assists or the lack of passing over the course of the season, how bad it is right now. There's no way Danny does not see that this team is one of the worst passing teams in the NBA. He has to see that. He's not dumb. He understands, like, when you watch these guys play, they just don't move the ball that well. So I think he's out there looking at that trade exception. But let me ask you, Zach, like, you're going to take on a $20 million player for this team. You're going to go into the luxury tax for this team. I think the ownership is like, we will definitely spend the money and go into the tax if we feel like we have a championship level team. But like, I don't know who's out there with this trade exception that you're looking to get, and all of a sudden you're a championship level team.
It is interesting. You know, those four guys, is like I said, have played 28 minutes together. Well, they carried them almost to the finals last year. And yet it still feels like, ironically, it's Brooklyn. What Brooklyn has done has just passed the Celtics, just lapped the Celtics. And of course, it was Brooklyn that Boston fleeced in one of the all-time great trades. You mentioned the trade exception and the luxury tax. I go back. I don't know who they're going to get now, if anybody, but I go back to the opportunity to get Miles Turner that they clearly passed on. And maybe they passed on it because they thought, well, if we don't do this trade, ultimately Gordon's going to come back here. Gordon's not going to sign with the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to call his bluff, and they did, and it didn't work out. But I still think, like, if they thought Miles Turner was really good and would help their team, Miles Turner would be on the Celtics, and Miles Turner's had a pretty good year. And you add that up to, like, you know, they got Isaiah Thomas for very little. Then they flip Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving. And at that moment, I even wrote this. At that moment, it was like one of the greatest rebuilding jobs in the history of professional sports. And since then, all those guys I've mentioned have left, mostly for nothing. All the extra picks, the Sac pick, the Memphis pick, which looked like they might be top 5 picks at the time, turned into middling lottery picks. And Danny and the Celtics, like they have, like, by the way, every other team in the NBA have a so-so record drafting outside the lottery. Like, sure, you can go and say, well, Yabusele at 16, that's a disaster. Olynyk at 15 ahead of Giannis, or 1 ahead of Giannis, or whatever. Wouldn't we like to have Desmond Bane and Matisse Thybulle? You can play that game for any team. I do think they could be like 10% better over the last 5 years at drafting in that range, but that's hard to do. But it does feel like when you froze it at that moment, it was, oh my God, they've just nailed this to a degree that is almost impossible, and they're going to be good for like 15 years. And now all this stuff has happened. It's like, okay, it's Tatum and Brown and not as much else as we thought it was going to be. Now, Kemba obviously getting injured, his knee issues have been a big part of that. But even so, a lot of franchises would change places for Boston just to have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum under team control for a long time. So
I think you're right. You're looking at these moments in time, and you know, I was actually against the Kyrie Irving because I didn't think that was like going to line up at the time. I really liked Isaiah. I wasn't sure about the medical, but you know, that pick would have probably ended up like the Celtics were super high on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they could have kept like preserved cap space. So a guy you didn't mention was Terry Rozier, and he would have been a part of the team. So there's like those pivots, which like it's really interesting in the NBA. Danny Ainge is a wheeler and dealer to try to win a championship. Like you make no bones about it with the Boston Celtics, and they're going to make moves to try to win a championship. A lot of teams aren't doing that. A lot of teams would have played it safe. You know, would you want Terry Rozier right now at $17 million when he first gets traded? And think about this. Terry Rozier was here. When he left, everyone's like, we can't pay him that much money. Jaylen Brown, when we paid him that, people were like, I can't believe you paid Jaylen Brown $23 million. Al Horford and the money he got. Gordon Hayward and the money he got. So now everyone is like begging these guys to stay, and we should have paid them. But everyone at the time was saying, like, you can't pay Al Horford 4 years down the road. Philadelphia had made that trade, and they were stuck with Al Horford, and they had to give up a pick just to get him. You know, the Gordon Hayward deal, like, I don't know where you were at, but I was scratching my head, like, how does Gordon get $130 million? I was like, that's beyond me. And then, like, I kind of underrated, like, the shift in the NBA. And, Zach, you see this happening right now. The NBA is getting smaller at the big position, but it's also getting bigger at the small position. And that's happening now, right now. And guys like Kemba Walker, it's not like it's a knock against Kemba Walker, but how hard Kemba Walker has to play to maintain the level in the NBA makes it very difficult for him right now to be out there. But with that being said, when Kemba Walker is good, you can see that there's a value for Kemba Walker. But like that's a hard pivot off of the Kyrie Irving trade, and then losing Kyrie Irving, and then losing Al Horford, and then losing Gordon Hayward. Those guys weren't walking for minimum deals now. No. They were walking where the Celtic ownership and management were like, man, we cannot pay these guys this amount of money to keep them. Gordon Hayward is, I mean, he's quote unquote the best player on Charlotte. It's totally different than he was our fourth option here. Can't pay your fourth option $30 million. There is a cap that people have to live by.
I think what you're expressing is, the Celtics have really tried to thread the needle of, we think we can contend for championships right now,
Correct.
but without compromising our cap sheet and our future to do it. And I think what we're learning is there's a little bit more of a short-term price to pay if you want to win right now. Like, it could be overpaying. Like, did the Lakers overpay Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? Maybe. But, no one cares about that when he's the third best player in their team and they win the championship. There's a little short-term pain that they've, I think, been maybe a little too reticent to absorb. But again, like you said, all those contracts people had sticker shock on. So it's hard to. And the other thing is, Denver's struggling, the Lakers are struggling, Miami is struggling. All the teams that got far in the bubble, is there a direct cause and effect? I don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence. They're all kind of struggling. But it is.
Don't stop there. Toronto, remember how they started out the year? Like, a lot of teams have started out. I think the only team I wouldn't put in this category is Brooklyn, because they had all these changes. Like, they're not struggling. All those guys are looking great out there. But most of the bubble teams, just take a look at them. They're not like those teams that made the run are having a hard time in the short turnaround. But it doesn't mean, listen, I said it back then, I said it now, until the Celtics, the struggling occurs if you're not playing good basketball. Like, they're not playing the basketball you need to succeed now. And by the way, Zach, in the playoffs, guess what goes way down the tubes is ball movement, because everybody knows what you're doing and everyone's prepared. It does come down to, can you go and get a bucket, up against that shot clock? And, like the Celtics the problem with them right now is they're playing the playoff style basketball without the playoff style effort in the regular season.
And not, I was gonna say, and not in the playoffs. Yeah, I think the Celtics they need the All-Star break more than almost any team in the league. I think once they get healthy, they will get on a run. Their offense will start to hit a groove a little bit. But you do have to zoom out and start to wonder, is the ceiling for this current group just lower than a lot of people thought? But long term, they still have the 2-star wings, but it looks like they're going to have to do more of a retooling around those guys than perhaps they imagine. I need to ask you 2 old Celtics questions if I have you on the podcast. So are you ready?
Got it. Well, let's close this Celtic thing. Trade exception. You heard today, Victor Oladipo is becoming available. There are guys that are becoming available, and it would be interesting with Danny coming out and doing that. I'm sure he's not sitting on his hands. But who? And no one talks about Romeo Langford. I don't know how much of a fan you are. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of Romeo Langford. I think he will make an impact when he does return. He is exactly the type of player that they need. He's consistent offensively. He has a good feel for the game, and he can defend. So we'll see when he comes back after the break. Marcus Smart coming back, but I do think Danny will be active with his trade exception. It might not be a $20 million player, but they might just be active without using the trade exception for right now.
The problem is nobody wants to give away players. There's 3 teams in the league who want to sell players. Okay, my 2 old Celtics questions. Number 1, a series that I'm always curious about from the 2008 title run. The banner is hanging in your background right now. That Atlanta series in the first round is the most random 7-game unexpected series maybe in modern NBA history. That Hawks, that's the Zaza Pachulia, nothing easy. They take this 66 win juggernaut is all of a sudden being pushed to the limit by a young under 500 Hawks team. So here's my question to you. Game 6, Game 7. Game 6, they win in Atlanta. Game 7, you guys blow them out at home. Were you guys scared? Were you guys what's happening to us? How are we not winning this? Was there doubt, or was there certainty? If we get we're just going to get Game 7 and move on.
So the one thing I will tell you is, so Tony Allen is a funny dude. That squad is a funny squad. We were certifiably crazy, right? But going into Game 7. This is so great. It's so great that Tony Allen was the voice of reason on the sideline as we're going through shoot around, getting ready for Game 7, and everyone is barking at everything. No, we ain't gonna do it that way. We're gonna do it this way. It was so uncharacteristic of our team, the edge that we had going into Game 7. And Tony Allen, who's like a nut, right? He's like, yo, man, y'all need to chill out, man. We got this. I was like, at that point, I'm like, what is going on here? The one thing that you have to, I think Bibby got traded. Al Horford is good.
Yeah.
And Joe Johnson was better than people
They had
think,
good players.
right?
They had good talent.
Yeah. They have good players on that team. They should not have taken us to 7 games. We destroyed them every time we played them at home. But you get to the highlight factory. And I don't know for all the fans who've been in Atlanta. Atlanta is like not a great place to play a regular season game. But in the playoffs, it is wild. It is absolutely wild. The fans are awesome. In Atlanta, in the playoffs, they're awesome. And so it was a little bit of that. And, but I tell you what, the way we kind of needed that series, like, to move on for us. Like, we needed to go 7 games with them. And we needed, like, to find out, like the type of team we are and go through some struggle. We had no trials and tribulations that whole year. Like, we'd lose a game here and there, like, whatever, right? But that we kind of needed that, and that got us super locked in and ready for the Cleveland series. We dealt with some struggles that they kept double teaming Ray Allen, and it like got us ready. And then by the end, and we played the Lakers, I think we were like supremely confident. But that Atlanta series was a good growth series for our team.
Every player or coach who has been on the same team at any moment as Kevin Garnett on this podcast is required to tell me a good Kevin Garnett story. So please tell me a good, and it could be rated NC-17. This is a safe space. This is not a family-friendly space.
Okay.
Any Kevin Garnett story.
All right. I think it was 2009, and we're going through the season, and we're doing this team was nuts. Like, we would bring boxing gloves and we would box one another. Like, the team was crazy, right? And for whatever reason, we get into arm wrestling, and everyone's challenging everyone, and we bet on free throws, we bet on threes, we bet on shots in the game, we bet on everything, like dice games, card games, who could flip the highest number. Like, it was a constant casino. Well, anyways, Big Baby is going through, and he is crushing everybody. I mean, Marcus said, boom.
Arm wrestling.
Boom. Arm wrestling, right? Crushing people. I think he messed up Eddie House's shoulder, which had
what is Eddie House even thinking? Just decline
that's not how you gotta be wired. Like, he beat me. You gotta be wired. You can't show at any moment. You can't show any. Oh man, I'm not gonna arm wrestle him. He'll beat me. No, at no moment, at any point with that team, can you show any weaknesses, right? Like, they're like hyenas, man. They'll just jump all over you, right? You had to come across as a persona that is like, it's probably not a healthy work environment, but it's great for sports, right? So anyway, boom, boom, boom. And now we're on the plane heading back from Toronto, and Kevin Garnett's like, come on, Funk, let's do this. And like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, you ain't really going to arm wrestle Big Baby. Like, you're going to lose. And like, Kevin Garnett has this aura of, you have to kill me to beat me and everything like that. So as this thing is happening, like, there's all these bets going down. Like, Paul Pierce, everyone bet Big Baby. And Paul Pierce lays down. I think he goes, everyone's like, I got Big Baby. No one wants to take Kevin Garnett. All of a sudden, P comes out with the money. Like, I got 2,000 on ticket. Boom, puts it down. And everyone's like, I'll take it. And then he's like, I got 2,000 more. Who wants it? I'll take it. So Pierce has like $10,000 on Kevin Garnett on the arm wrestling. And I'm like, there is no way. I've seen Big Baby crush Leon Poe, and Leon Poe's strong. He was boom. So I guess the story is that Big Baby was always like grabbing the table with his opposite hand, and he was like using leverage.
Oh.
So Garnett noticed that, and he told Big Baby, you got to we want to make sure you see your hand. You got to keep your hand up. So I think they made him like lock the opposite hand when they're doing arm wrestling, right? So anyways, Garnett, they say, Marcus said go, and Garnett's like, I ain't moving. Big Baby was, he's like, I'm not moving. It was sort of like a rope-a-dope, like trying to get him all psyched out, like, I'm not moving no matter what. He wasn't trying to push him down, but he wasn't just sort of like holding his ground, right? all of a sudden Big Baby starts sweating and he's like, he starts breathing hard and Garnett's like, I'm not moving. And then all of a sudden like, yeah, then he starts like, yeah, I got you. Oh yeah, I got you, Funk. I got you, you big ass motherfucker. I got you. And like a minute into it, he starts moving. He's like, there, you saw it. And all of a sudden he goes like this primal scream. He's like, I got you, motherfucker. Boom. And the plane and everybody's like running around. And then Garnett rips off his shirt and there's season ticket holders. And I would love, there was probably like 5 or 6 7-year-old kids. I would love to hear their version of the story in the back. Cause that's how it was. Like now all the players are separate, right? But now it was like players and then like media, like not media members are in the back. And then this group of kids that are like season ticket holders and their families that get to go to these games, right? And he takes off his shirt. He's in like the tank top. He's like, oh, y'all motherfuckers, you better take notice. I'm the silverback gorilla in this motherfucker. And don't none of y'all ever forget it. He's spitting all over the place, sweating all over the place, planes going nuts. Paul Pierce is like counting the money up in the air. It was the most wild thing you ever seen. Like I think the pilot was like, congratulations, Kevin Garnett. Like it was like, the whole thing was nuts. Anyways, it's a good example of like nothing passes Kevin Garnett. Like he sees all details. He knows everything. He knows where he's at. And it's like you literally have to kill him to beat him. That is his mindset. That is the way he's wired. And he had no business beating Big Baby, but like for him to do that, and we all recognize like it was like him establishing, I am the alpha male in all areas of this thing, whether teammates, everything.
I have 2 follow-up questions that are very important. Number 1, did Paul Pierce buy anyone anything with his winnings?
I should have asked what he did. I mean, he won. He had $20,000. So I don't know what he bought. I don't know if he bought tickets, something, or I don't know what he bought with it. But he was like just like showing everybody. He picked up all the money.
Number 2, what is Doc Rivers doing all this? Because
betting. He's right there, right next to you.
See, if I'm Doc Rivers, I'm like, my only thought going through my head, and this is the window into my neurotic sensibility, is I just can't have Kevin Garnett injuring his shoulder arm wrestling Glenn Davis.
No. The coaches were there. Everything. The aisle is narrow. And then you had seats.
I've been on a plane. I know what a plane looks like.
Yeah, so we're like climbing on top of each other. It's just like if the plane had like an unbalancing, like the plane could have just like fell right over. We all like I was like up on the top climbing over somebody just to see this, and it was like the whole thing was dark, and the plane lights, like the table lights, the most insane thing. Coaches were back there, like the team. And you ask anybody from the 08 squad, and they'll tell you it was like nothing you'll ever experience every single day. And by the way, the next year I'm on the Bulls and we're really good. Like we're really good. And because my mind is so messed up from being a part of that team, I didn't think that we were championship level, because now I associate championship level with being completely up, right? So now I'm like looking at the Bulls and Thibodeau, we're like winning games, and we got Derrick Rose and we got Noah. We got a good team. But I'm like, we're not up enough. I don't think we can win it all. We're just not like, we don't have that crazy factor. Even though I was completely wrong, we could have won it all. But like that team, to beat LeBron, to beat these people, to go in LA and beat Kobe and all that stuff, you had to be messed up.
I'm glad we gave the Celtics fans something happy to remember. There needs to be a Kevin Garnett documentary, and it could be like 7 hours long. I don't care.
It's coming out.
Something's happening. I'll watch the whole thing. I don't care how long it is. I'll watch the whole thing.
He's had a new book out right now, and in the documentary, I'm doing some interviews for the documentary. It's like coming out.
And he's a movie star.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
All right, Scal, thanks for your time. Your TV work is fantastic. It's always good to see you. Brian Scalabrine, everybody. All right, let's welcome in Seattle Kraken fan and friend of the program for our All-Star Draft, Mr. Kevin Pelton. Kevin, I hope you're doing well. I know you have requested the floor to talk about the end of last night's Nuggets-Wizards game, so please have at it.
Analytics does not tell you to try to shoot a 3 in that situation. I think it's fascinating. So I was watching that game live. I flipped over from Pelicans Bucks for the stretch run of that game. And just the level of, it was kind of similar to the end of last year's Nuggets Jazz Game 7, where just a series of things happened where you went, like, what is happening right now? The fact that so many Wizards crashed the offensive glass with mere seconds remaining in the game, and Denver secures the ball, and you realize all of a sudden they're going to have a fast break opportunity in this situation, down 2, no timeout, chaos happening, and then everyone runs to the 3-point line, and Jamal Murray draws 2 defenders to the ball. Like, I don't know that Jamal Murray should be throwing his teammates under the bus publicly, but I'm with him that it wasn't his fault what happened there. He drew 2 to the ball. He did his job. There was a clear path for a dunk. Michael Porter Jr. could have walked in and dunked the ball, and they would have gone to overtime, but he went to the 3-point line instead. And I rewound it several times. At no point during that did I think, oh, he did this because analytics tells him to run to the 3-point line during transition. My first assumption, as I tweeted, was they thought they were down 3 and needed a 3, kind of the inverse of the Pelicans, who then tried desperately to shoot a 2 later in the night in a situation where they were down 3.
We just call that a J.R. Smith now. If you don't know the score at the end of the game, that's what it is.
To me, it's always going to be a Betty Lennox, going back to my WNBA days, because she did that in a game I covered. But yeah, I think it's probably the ultimate answer is it's just kind of the fog of war, the chaos out there in that situation explains both of them. But please, let's not try to put this on analytics. Analytics tells you, looking at the value of shots, tells you take the certain dunk, don't try to take the 3.
No, human beings are so dumb that we have to fight about dumb things all the time. That's just what we do now. We just fight about dumb things. That just has to be the discourse now. Before we draft All-Stars, the Nuggets are now 17-15. As you said, there was some sniping, maybe a little strong, but there was some, eyebrow-raising comments after the game last night. How worried are you about the Denver Nuggets, who made the conference finals last year and had very, very high expectations and maybe buyers at the trade deadline coming up?
Well, here's the thing about the Nuggets is they are slightly behind where they were in 2018-19 when they lost in the second round in terms of point differential. They're ahead of last season's pace. This is really just all about, I guess last night was emblematic. This is really all about the last couple of years. They have dramatically outperformed what you would expect in their point differential. And this year they are dramatically underperforming what you would expect from it. Now, the 72-game schedule, things may not even out, but I would be surprised if they ended up any lower than 5th. I mean, which is, I think, where they are now. Or maybe they're
8th now.
Oh, they're 8th? Okay. Well, I would be surprised if they ended up below 5th. Phoenix has been played well enough that I think there's a real chance that they hang on to home court advantage in the first round. But I think they're probably going to be okay, especially when you consider, like, they've been rolling out some rough second units the last 2 weeks here because of injuries.
Yeah, I still am not worried about Denver. I mean, last night they were missing Gary Harris, who, by the way, when you watch how bad their perimeter defense is, you begin to realize again, as you did during the Utah series, just how important it is to have one more competent wing defender who's going to get around screens and make the right plays. It just changes their entire teams. They're missing Gary Harris, Paul Millsap, JaMychal Green, probably someone else I'm forgetting. Will Barton has been a shell of himself the entire season. I do think they'll be okay, but like the Celtics that I just talked about with Scal, you do reach a point where all these logical reasons begin to be outweighed by the just sort of human dynamics of frustration and not meeting expectations and answering questions from the media about it every day. And it can sort of infect the fabric of the team. And I think the Nuggets, who have a lot of guys who have had to sacrifice to make that team work, and sometimes like Will Barton will chirp about it now and then in the media, like I think they're going to need to start winning some games sooner rather than later to just sort of stabilize the internal dynamic. But I do think their defense is still not good enough. And that's on everybody. They just need to be a little better. But let's not talk about the Nuggets too much, because we are going to talk about a Nugget pretty soon as we draft All-Stars. Who's picking first? I don't even know who picks first, LeBron or Durant.
I think LeBron picks first since he got the most votes. That's what's happened in the past, although they haven't confirmed that I've seen. Okay,
so look, you're LeBron, because I'm a nice person. I'm going to let you pick first. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to be Durant. And we're gonna pick rapid fire. I'm going to explain my in crafting my team. I'm not trying to win the game. I'm trying to make the most fun team. That's all I'm trying to do. So these are not rankings. When I don't draft Kawhi very high, spoiler, it's like I love Kawhi. I want the most fun all-star team possible. And so that's my criteria. You may have your own criteria. Mr. Pelton, would you like to be on the clock for the and we have to draft the 8 remaining starters first before we get to any of their reserves. So as much as I might want to pick Zach LaVine number 1, I can't. I have to pick the 8 starters first, and then we can pick the reserves. We will have some all-star debates as we go. Mr. Pelton, you're on the clock. There is no clock. You're on a fake clock for the number 1 pick in the draft.
Well, I'm concerned because the very second you talked about crafting a team for fun instead of to try to win the game was the moment I realized that somehow I had omitted Zion Williamson from my rankings of reserves here.
Boy, you're not prepared at all. This is so disappointing. Just make your first pick.
That's trouble. It's much earlier out here on the West Coast than it is for you. I want to note that in my defense. So I actually wrote about this when the starters came out and took it way too seriously and looked up players' career performance in the All-Star game because I think that's a meaningful thing. Like, there are some guys clearly who take the All-Star game seriously and some who don't. And a guy who takes the All-Star game seriously was the MVP of it just last year and is also very good at basketball, even if he's not necessarily the leading contender for MVP, is Kawhi Leonard, and that's who I'm taking.
Okay, Kawhi's off. So you're LeBron, right? So you have LeBron and Kawhi on the same team.
Yeah, I think that's
I'm a little intimidated right off the bat. Except I'm Kevin Durant. I'm not intimidated by anyone. I'll just pull up in the finals and drill a 3 right in your freaking face, LeBron, and win the championship. So Kawhi was ranked last among all of my starters on my fun list. So I don't care that you pick Kawhi. You're a sucker. I'm off to a great start. I am picking, shockingly to no one, the first pick on my team, Team Durant, will be Nikola Jokic, the most fun player in the NBA. And someone who did not look very engaged. Interestingly, that game, Washington had a layup line last night, and Jokic, his defense is just one of those things that the analytics and the eye test are far apart on. I meet somewhere in the middle. I think those numbers must be telling me something. They're telling me that he gets a lot of steals and he gets a lot of rebounds, and those things are helpful. But there were 4 or 5 layups last night that the Wizards had where he just didn't move. He was just like, I'm not engaging with this layup. I'm just going to stay here. And also on offense, there were some possessions where I like when he's more selfish. The Nuggets need him to be more, not selfish, just they need him to shoot. They need him to post it. There are some possessions last night where you could tell he was like, I'm just going to shoot. Like, I'm done passing for a little while. I'm just going to shoot. It's just interesting to watch. But his defense, the Nuggets are allowing 70% shooting at the rim. It's the worst mark in the entire league, and he's part of that. But I don't care if he allows 100% shooting at the rim in the All-Star game. He's going to throw 19 passes that made me leap from my chair and get everybody on my team dunked. So that's Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, rim protection is admittedly pretty low on my list of priorities for the All-Star game as well here. As someone who's trying to win, even let alone the entertainment side of it. I mean, Jokic is like Kevin Love, I've always thought, in terms of the things they are bad at defensively are the things that are the most obvious watching, and the things that they are good at defensively tend to be a little more subtle. And I can see how that would be frustrating as a teammate as well as an observer.
Well, and he's got no help last night from Monty Morris, Jamal Murray, Will Barton, just smacking into every pick and falling 7 feet behind ball handlers and leaving him on an island where he's not going to survive on an island like Tom Hanks in Castaway. He's going to just allow layups, and that's it. Okay, make your next pick.
I'm going with Kyrie here. He also has a strong All-Star track record, has been an MVP in the past. I don't know about if we get into the last 5 minutes, his defensive size is maybe a little bit of a concern there, but there's also the nice sentimentality of anytime LeBron and Kyrie get together. And LeBron has picked Kyrie every time he's had the opportunity since there's been an All-Star draft.
Okay, well, that leaves me as Kevin Durant. I'm going to have a nice moment, and I'm going to pick my teammate on 2 championship teams, and another one of the most fun players to watch, Stephen Curry, is going to be on Team Durant. So I've got Durant, Jokic, and Curry. I'm on the fun rankings. I'm blowing you away, even though you have LeBron, Kyrie, and Kawhi. I like my team. I like my team so far. I and Steph and KD get to team up. In crunch time, I can run a Curry Durant pick and roll. That's what I'm calling. Pelton, deal with that. Make your pick.
Your 10 things column from that entire period springs to life. I mean, Steph was at the very bottom of my rankings because you want to talk about somebody who does not take the All-Star game seriously and has been extremely bad in them over the course of his career. It's Steph Curry. I'm calling you out, Steph. Bring it for the All-Star game.
I did not do any research on All-Star game performances. We might have to have a pregame shoot-around. We might have to have a shoot-around then to address it. I might have to bring him off the bench. I might have to make a coaching change and bring him off the bench. It's not allowed, but I might have to do that.
At this point, I am going to go with Giannis. I think it's between Giannis and Embiid for me. I get some legitimate size here to go along with my LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard forward duo.
That was going to be my pick, but you know what? I'm next. I am going to take Joel Embiid. Do I care that I have Nikola Jokic? I don't. Am I going to play the two of them, maybe the entire game together just to see what happens? Yeah, I'm going to do that. They will get post-up opportunities. They will run pick and rolls together. They will shoot threes. They will run a 2-on-1 fast break. I'm going all in on fun, and I get the best trash talker in the entire league. And a guy, by the way, who took the game seriously last year and was dominating portions of it when they were all trying in the fourth quarter because of the Elam ending. So I'm happily taking Joel Embiid. Good luck guarding my double post-up throwback attack.
Yeah, we are a little light on size, certainly. We're gonna be relying on shooting. So that leaves us with Luka Doncic and Bradley Beal is the last two starters here. I mean, Luka's
disrespectful. We've disrespected them. They've been disrespected.
Or if we're going to seriously disrespect some people with the reserves, I suppose. Despite the fact that I think that Luka is probably the better basketball player of these two in a vacuum, I think I'm going to go Beal because I just want another shooter. I've got plenty of ball handling already.
I'll take Luka. I mean, I have to take Luka. I'm mandated to take Luka. I was also going to take Beal over Luka. Beal feels like a more fun all-star player. I'm not that interested in watching Luka. I mean, he's an absolute savant as a passer and a playmaker. He's an MVP candidate. He makes passes that really no one else in the league, I think, including LeBron, makes. Now, LeBron makes passes that other people don't make. I just don't really want to watch like a parade of step-back threes that are not taken by Stephen Curry in the All-Star game. So I had Luka. I had Luka below them, but I'll put him on my team. So I've got my starting five is Curry, Luka, Embiid, Durant, Jokic. I'm happy with that.
I've got Kyrie and Beal in the backcourt, LeBron and Kawhi at forward. Giannis is my nominal center, since you took both the
our defense,
ones.
We're going to have some issues defensively. I might have to, but it's fine. I don't care. Okay, so I guess I just picked Luka, right? So you get to pick the first reserve.
I mean, I think this is probably similar to how it will actually go. But
I'm already crossing off the name. I know who you're going to pick. I'm already got my purple magic marker. It's being crossed off.
Somebody who takes All-Star games more seriously than anyone, takes everything more seriously than anyone, probably will flop to draw fouls during an All-Star game. Chris Paul is my number one pick.
So I had him initially very low because it feels like the students drafting the principal to play like a flag football game or something. Like, I just don't want to hang out with that guy off the floor when it's party time because he's going to tattle on me when my jersey's untucked. He's going to, who knows what else he's going to do. But then I remembered there is All-Star Chris Paul. And that is one of the most fun things about the All-Star game is he sheds his he still wants to win, but he sheds his like methodical over seriousness, calculated persona, and like busts out all the tricky dribble moves, tries to humiliate people. He dunked last year in the All-Star game. Remember that? He caught an alley-oop and dunked, and everyone was like, Chris Paul can still dunk? Chris Paul, All-Star version of Chris Paul is so much fun. I had him actually fourth out of my 14, or what is it? Yeah, 14 reserves. But you've stolen him from me, and you now are probably going to win the game with Chris Paul and LeBron James taking it very seriously. I will pick the name I initially thought you were going to pick. I'm just going to pick Zion Williamson because I'm team fun. I'm now at risk of having too many fun players whose fun is going to bring up a law of diminishing returns so they can't have as much fun. But how can you not? I can't believe you just blew this by not picking Zion first.
He was a little bit lower in my ranks, but I think, having him on the receiving end of lobs from players in the All-Star game is going to be tremendously fun. And I do think, look, we should take this serious. I kind of think we should say, like, pick an All-Star team that's the 12 best players, and then pick an All-Star team that's the 12 players who are the most fun on each conference, and let those guys actually play in the game. So Chris Paul is like someone I felt was about Jason Kidd at the end of his career. The All-Star game is just better with him in it, even if he's not necessarily one of the 12 best players in his conference by that point. And that's probably already true about Zion, even though he's now become deserving, I think, as well.
You're this bulletin board material for my team here, bad-mouthing Zion like this. How do you rate obviously, Point Zion has been a revelation in the last 3 weeks. How do you rate I haven't checked the numbers recently, the advanced numbers. How do you rate Zion's defense? Like, what's his weak spots on defense? Where are we on Zion's defense?
Well, the good news, I wrote about this the other day, is his block rate has doubled from his rookie season. That's encouraging. We're seeing more there. We're not seeing the steal rate that we saw from him at Duke. I mean, the thing that stands out watching him play is there's just moments where he's on the weak side and something will happen where he should be helping, and he just remains where he is. And I don't think it's a physical limitation. I do think there are some physical limitations in terms of his ability to really quickly change directions on the perimeter, but I think that's just a lack of attentiveness defensively.
Yeah, we all know that he has not been great defensively. His mobility and attention and effort come and go. Some of that will improve as he, both learns the rhythms of the NBA and decides to really dial in. I just think, interestingly, long term is like, how often can he play center? I mean, they've clearly decided we're just not going to do that this year because we have Steven Adams and we have Jackson Hayes and now Willie Hernan-Gomez is playing. But and they're trying to win, they're trying to make the playoffs. But I think long term that's an interesting question. Okay, you get to pick. If you blow this one, I'm laughing you right off the podcast.
That's interesting. I'm not sure who you think is the obvious pick here, but I was going to take James Harden. He was second on my list, but then it occurred to me that the idea of a Chris Paul, James Harden backcourt reuniting them may not be the best idea. It may not.
No, it
be
is the best
good
idea. It's the best idea. You should take him for that reason. Will they pass to each other? Will they be cranky?
So I'm going to take Paul George and continue to load up on two-way wings.
You're taking this way too seriously. Paul George was like 10th in my reserves. I just happily crossed him off. So you just gifted me to review Zion Williamson, and now the number one reserve on my entire list of fun guys I want on my team, Zach LaVine, is off the board for you. So I'm just, and I don't even need to explain that. Zach LaVine, I think Vince Carter is the best dunker in the history of the NBA. Zach LaVine is right there, and his dunk contest performance his performances plural absolutely rivaled Vince Carter prime dunk performances, and that's all I'm drafting him for. I don't care about anything else. I just want Zach LaVine to dunk 10 times in the All-Star game with style.
I mean, obviously the All-Star game is much closer to a dunk contest situation. The one thing is there a really memorable Zach LaVine in-game dunk that I'm missing? Because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I'm sure. I mean, just when he has a runway on a fast break, it's going to look awesome. But yeah, in terms of on somebody, the way Anthony Edwards just murdered Yuta Watanabe on live television, I don't recall one like that. Where were you by the end on should Zach LaVine actually make the All-Star team?
I mean, I think that in terms of performance this season, he's probably in a similar ballpark to some of the guys who didn't make it, with the exception of Jimmy Butler, who I think clearly, we're going to look back on this, assuming he stays healthy in the second half, and wonder why wasn't Jimmy Butler an all-star, just because of the fact that he happened to miss an extended period during this unprecedented pandemic season. Like, he's been the best performer of this group this season. He has the best track record of this group. He looked like a top 10 player last year in the playoffs. I think it's going to be pretty clear that he should have been an all-star. I think the more interesting case is probably more like him versus Middleton, that group of players versus Middleton, who's someone who's been performing at a relatively similar level to them this season, but also has an all-star track record.
And Middleton is a two-time All-Star or a one-time All-Star?
I think 2-time.
Yeah, I left Middleton off in the end, and I was actually surprised that the coaches did the same thing. I thought he would just sort of make it by just he plays for the Bucks, put him on. It was a hard decision. I love Chris. I wrote a big, long profile of Chris a couple years ago. He's, again, at 50, 40, 90, and I saw some Bucks fans, angsty Bucks fans saying, well, he's been better than he was in his last All-Star season. How did he not make the All-Star team? That doesn't make any logical sense. Well, James Harden plays in the East now. Kevin Durant plays in the East now. And a lot of these other guys who are number one options, which Chris Middleton is not, although he plays very well with Giannis on the bench. Now, that's against a lot of opposing backups, so read into it what you will. But, I saw a lot of scoffing at what Julius Randle has done this year. The Knicks are mediocre. They're making their bones on defense. I just don't think you can scoff at 23, 12, and 5.5 on good shooting with that level of offensive talent around him and the responsibility. I think that's a legitimately really good season, and I have never once watched the Knicks this year and thought, well, Julius Randle is just putting up empty stats on a bad team. I think that's a real thing. And so I just felt, given the fact that Chris Middleton really went into a weird slump when Drew Holiday, who was arguably the second best player on the Bucks before his coronavirus protocols thing, I just thought we're all splitting hairs. All these guys are awesome. They're all deserving. I'm just going to reward the guys who have the larger responsibility to their teams. Whether their teams are worse or better than the Bucks, I don't particularly care. So that was my reasoning.
I mean, that's the thing is, I've seen a few people suggest that given the number of deserving players that didn't make the All-Star game this year, that's a justification for increasing the rosters, which I am in favor of. I mean, we have 13 players on game day rosters in typical seasons. This year it's 15 because, again, this is an unusual season during a pandemic. So the fact that we've kept the All-Star rosters at 12 throughout all of this roster expansion is kind of strange to me. But if you think that's going to make it better in terms of this, outcry over snubs that has become an annual tradition, like the lower you go, the more similar these players' cases are going to be, the less separation there will be between them. It is actually going to make it worse if we expand the rosters.
Make your pick.
Okay. I am going with Damian Lillard, who I think is very fun. So I'm a little surprised that he's not higher on your rankings.
He's not all-star fun, though.
Yeah.
I guess, he's not going to go, maybe he will go on these crazy Dame streaks where he just makes 8 30-footers in a row. I didn't have him very high. You're drafting a real basketball team. I'm drafting a circus act to entertain the fans. And I am going to win the hearts and minds, even if my team loses by 20. I will come out the winner. When we have the VIP reception after the game, everyone's going to be coming up to me with free drinks and toasting me, and you can take your W and go away. Now it gets a little hard. James Harden is the obvious pick here. He's a showman. He's one of the best passers in the league, as he has reminded us in Brooklyn. I am going to take, though, and I'm going to put on a Mike Conley jersey as I make the pick, just out of sympathy. I'm going to take someone who I just think wants to come in and get buckets in an old school stylish way and a new school three-point bomber way. I'm going to take Devin Booker. And now that you've picked Chris Paul, I get to pit them against each other. That's kind of fun. I'm going to take Book. I like Book. And this will allow me a moment here to address the snub culture, as you just did. Like, this whole Devin Booker, LeBron tweeted it. Devin Booker is the most disrespected player in the NBA. Okay, well, the coaches made the decision, so they're the ones doing the disrespecting. Second of all, I didn't have Devin Booker on my 12-man All-Star roster, and I love Devin Booker. I've been a Devin Booker stockholder for a long time. LeBron should be required to tweet, and this would be an actual act of disrespect, who he thinks should come off the All-Star team to put the disrespected Devin Booker onto the All-Star team. Now, Anthony Davis's injury would have given him perhaps an easy out this year, but we seem to lose touch with not advanced math, not math, counting. We seem to lose touch with counting. My daughter can count way past 100. We get to All-Star snub season, people can't count to 12. They can't count to 13. You get 12. Who are you taking off? But I am putting Devin Booker. I'm making him my third reserve pick, and he's just going to run off screens, get buckets, take some stylish mid-rangers. I'm excited to have Devin Booker on my team. You go.
Our colleague Bobby Marks did, I believe, literally tweet this to LeBron, who he should replace. So kudos to Bobby for taking that quite seriously. I don't think he's going to reply on a
rattling the king's throne.
I'm going to take Jason Tatum here. When you get into that close game scenario, you probably can't have enough two-way wings. That's the most scarce resource in the NBA. So even though he's not having anywhere close to the best season of this group, I still have him at the top of my board. And I'm daring you to pick James Harden.
You're thinking about crunch time. You're thinking about, I guess I have to try to win now. So I'm gonna skip the guy that I really want to pick because I don't think you're gonna pick him. And I'm gonna pick James Harden just because he's James Harden, and I should give some token attention to trying to win the game. And I have a wild team now. Harden and Durant get reunited from Oklahoma City and now Brooklyn. I've got two centers. I've got Harden and Curry, playoff rivals. I've got lots of Harden gets to throw lobs to Levine and Zion. I'm excited about my team. So James Harden, I feel like that's a game-changing pick for me. I've just tilted the balance of power a little bit.
Although maybe you could have waited a long time to get him, because I don't know if I was going to take Harden and pair him with CP3 at any point. I have neglected the center position thus far, which is maybe consistent with some of my analysis, you might say. And even though I think I need someone to finish lobs, so I'm going to take Rudy Gobert and hope that he gets a bunch of. I was going to say it. It's banned on this show. I was going to make that joke, but I forgot that the term is banned on this show.
Yeah, well, he leads the league of screen assists. He was last. No disrespect to Rudy. He was last on my reserve list. But even though, as I've said, I am entertained by the guy who tries to play real basketball during the All-Star game. And so now you have him in Rudy Gobert. He's going to be setting picks and getting on people about, making sure their defensive assignments are on point, trying to block shots at the rim. So, and by the way, if he really tries to block shots at the rim, that's exciting. That makes for some exciting moments. But I was not going to pick Rudy, so you can have Rudy Gobert.
He would not be last on my fun rankings, with all due respect to
he
some
leads
of
the
these
league in
other
dunks, right? So it's hard to. I bet we have the same guy last in our. Well, the same. My second to last guy, I bet, is your last guy. I am going to very happily take. I'm going to take a moment to appreciate this and savor this moment. Team Lowe / team. Who am I? Durant. Team Durant is taking. After years and years of suffering and waiting, navigating the pestilence and famine, we're taking Julius Randle on Team Durant, and we're just going to let him play point, whatever. Get a rebound, be that bowling ball running up and down the floor, spray out passes to everybody, hit people, just be Julius Randle. We're thrilled to have you on our team. And by the way, again, I think I picked him for my fake real 12-man roster. And, I think his defense has been a little better this year. I don't know how he rates by our stuff. I think his defensive numbers have been okay. He's in shape. And I've just been more impressed by this guy that was so wild at times with the ball and so shoot first that he would just run into four guys and everybody would fall over and it would be a turnover. He's making the right play every single time almost for the Knicks this year. The right kick-out pass, unselfish plays, and I think he's a totally deserving All-Star. I'm happy to have him on Team Durant.
I think you've undermined your own strategy because with all due respect to Julius Randle's, the funness of him in a regular basketball game, I don't feel like it translates in the All-Star game.
Fine. Bulletin board material. Go ahead. I think there's an obvious pick for you here, but you go ahead.
Well, you've left an extremely fun player on the board, and someone needs to be throwing some of these alley-oops to Rudy Gobert that Chris Paul and Damian Lillard don't, and that's Ben Simmons.
Ooh! Plot twist.
Did you think it's going Mitchell?
I thought you were going with Donovan Mitchell, who I will now take with the following pick because I think he's a very, very fun player. Powerful dunker. Takes a lot of difficult kind of twisting, floating shots that should make for some fun all-star material. Ben Simmons, he is in this setting, I think, an entertaining player. Defense, just pace, kicking out the shooters. I just want everybody on my team to be able to shoot. That's all.
It's odd that I ended up with lighter on shooting. I'm going to take Jaylen Brown here. I'm a little surprised. I guess he's not a very fun all-star player, but I'm a little surprised he didn't go earlier.
No, he was third to last on my list. There's just nothing. I mean, I love Jaylen Brown. He's a totally deserving All-Star. He's made a leap as a player. He's a great basketball player. I just never, when the Celtics come up on my wheel of games to watch on that particular night, I never sit down and like, man, I can't wait to see what Jaylen Brown has in store tonight. I might as well ask you, since I just had Scal, what's your concern level about the Celtics?
Moderate. I mean, I think that the good news is they are going to be relatively easy to add. It's going to be relatively easy for them to add help at the trade deadline because of the fact that they've got this strong core, and what they need is, some depth to complement that. So I think they're going to be a better team in a month than they are right now, but they're going to have a hard time. I think the chances of them winning a playoff series are not as good as I thought they were coming into the season.
This is not a fair question to ask you. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. This is your job. In the end, zooming out from the Brooklyn trade until now, is it a success? Do they have enough going forward?
I mean, it's interesting. They have the hardest parts done in terms of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, two guys at positions of need who are young, who are going to be there for an extended period of time. And it should be relatively easy to find the right players to put around them at some point. And obviously they have gotten to the conference finals several times here, even though I don't know if they were ever a real legit championship threat in any of those appearances. But I still think there's time for it to be a success. I would say if the getting to the conference finals ends up the high point, then probably not.
I won't belabor with the response because we talked about it with Scal. I will say that, to bring up Tatum and Brown, people are hammering Danny Ainge's draft track record, and Scal and I discussed that a little bit, and I think in some ways that's fair and in some ways it's not. And one of the ways it's not fair is in all the focus on Yabusele at 16 and, Olynyk and James Young.
My guy RJ Hunter. You sort of just scoff right over because they've been such clear hits. That Jaylen Brown at 3 was not a consensus pick. And the Jason Tatum, Markelle Fultz thing was not a consensus move at all at the time. And to nail those bold strokes at the top, 5 years later, you look at it and say, oh, yeah, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, yeah, top picks. That's, of course, they're great. They're great outcomes for number 3, blah, 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 blah. Those are franchise-changing decisions. And, yes, as Scal and I talked about, some of the stuff that's happened since they acquired Irving has gone sideways. But just remember, when you're nitpicking Danny Ainge's draft record, those picks are part of it, and they were considered bold and at least slightly out-of-the-box moves, depending on who you talk to at the time. Yeah, and given the alternative with Jaylen Brown was probably Dragan Bender, then I think that there are ways that things could have gone much, much worse. And I think this is consistent with something the research shows is there's not really any pick-to-pick consistency in terms of, well, this team is good at drafting and this team is bad at drafting. That whatever ability that you do have to predict the future about a player who's probably 19 years old is swamped by just the randomness of the outcome for any individual player.
So that leaves me with what I believe is the Domantas Sabonis Memorial last pick of the All-Star draft, and I take Nikola Vucevic, which isn't an ideal fit for my team since I have the two best centers in the NBA already, but you better believe we're putting all three of them on the floor for a few minutes here and there, and maybe we'll play some point Vooch. Who knows? But someone has to be the last pick. I understand why it's Vucevic. He's a good passer. He'll throw some nice passes. Doesn't dunk much. I'd like to see, maybe I can get a couple of Vooch dunks. Maybe we'll get like a Vooch 1-on-0 fast break, and the crowd will come to their feet wondering what's going to happen. So I would like to see our teams play. I have Durant, Jokic, Curry, Embiid, Luka as my starters. Zion and Levine off the bench. I mean, forget about it. I don't know how you let that happen. Booker, Harden, Randall, Mitchell, Vucevic. I'm happy with that. I've come away. I wanted Jokic. I was very worried you were going to take Jokic first. I wanted Jokic, Embiid, and Curry, and one of Zion and Levine, and I got all of them.
Appropriately, you ended up with all the players from the Balkan region as well.
Did I really? I got Jokic and Vucevic.
And Doncic.
And Luka. Well, Oh, I can talk to them a little bit in their language, and we can swear and stuff, and have some rakia and oh, that's a happy accident, Mr. Pelton. So I don't even know when the All-Star game is, but it's coming up pretty soon, and they'll use the Elam ending again. Were there any other thoughts you wanted to get in? I know you had a Chris Middleton take of some kind, or did we already hit that?
I think we pretty much hit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else do we have from you? You have your Zion column that was up yesterday. We have your mailbag today, right, which is always interesting, and you get into something that you and I were talking about privately, which is sometimes I don't know what to do with these players where all the advanced stats are all over the place and why that is. It's always an interesting column, that mailbag. You always have a few topics. Anything else coming up that we want to talk about?
I just want to say that, your team may have more fun, but I'm confident my team is going to win when we play this imaginary game.
Can we simulate this somehow? Is there a way to simulate this on like NBA 2K for people who have video games and is there a way we can play this out?
I'm confident that there is a way, yeah.
Somebody listening, look, I'm 43 years old. I don't know how to do anything. Someone listening, play this out in a 7-game series. I don't know if you can do that, but just play it out once and tell me who wins. That's all. All right, Kevin Pelton, they read everything he does at Insider. He's just a machine of quality content. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.